Quit your studio or lose your home. My mother's voice wasn't loud. It was worse than that. It was flat, like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror a dozen times. She was standing at the kitchen counter with the utility bills spread out like a hand of losing cards. I could smell the burnt coffee from the pot she'd left on the warmer for 3 hours. The kitchen had that stale, closed-up smell of a house that had stopped being a home and turned into a holding cell. My father was behind her, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the floor, at a crack in the linoleum that had been there since I was 10. Lose my home, I repeated. I don't own the place I'm living in. I'm in a studio, sorry, Mom. I can't lose something I don't have. Your home as in your family, my father said, finally raising his head. His jaw was tight. You have until the end of the week to get a real job and shut down that artsy nonsense. I'd painted a portrait of a firefighter's dog just last week. The firefighter had held the painting with trembling hands and said, "This is the most honest thing anyone's ever given me." I'd taken $70 for it. The color had cost me $30. I'd worked 17 hours. Nonsense, I said. The words sat in my chest like a stone. It's not nonsense. It's my rear. Rear, my mother scoffed. She picked up one of the bills and shook it at me. This is a rear. This is where your father and I have poured every penny for 30 years. The mortgage is behind 2 months. Your grandmother's nursing home bill is so high it makes me sick to even look at it, and your cousin is getting married in 3 months with a $12,000 our flower budget that the family is supposed to help cover. And you're painting dogs for pocket change. I felt something shift in the room. The air grew heavier. It was one of those moments that even as it's happening, is going to break something. I'll help, I said, though I had no idea how. I'll pick up more commissions. I've been getting noticed online. People rooting to find my work. My father laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound, like wood splitting. Noticed. Online. You know how many people trying to be noticed online? 1 million. 10 million. You think your little phone videos going to fix this family's problems? You think $100 our dog portrait is going to pay for your grandmother's Alzheimer's? $70. My mother corrected quietly. You told me you made 70. The crack in the linoleum seemed to widen beneath my feet. I looked from their faces to the bills on the counter. There was a letter from the nursing home with a red stamp on it. Past due. 3 weeks overdue. Then tell me what to do, I said. Tell me exactly what you want. My mother folded her arms. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She'd passed that point a long time ago. I want you to go to the employment office tomorrow. I want you to fill out applications at the factories and the wari houses. There are jobs out there. Honest work. I want you to put away your brushes and face reality. The words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't the dismissal of my work that hurt. It was the dismissal of who I was. She had never understood that painting wasn't something I did. It was something I was. I have 3 commission pieces due in 2 weeks, I said ruefully. If I just quit mid-project, that's not fair to the clients. Let me finish those and then I'll. No. My father stepped 4-way road. He was a big man, still strong despite the gray in his hair. No more deadlines. No more waiting. This family has been waiting for you to figure your life out for 4 years. For years, you've been drifting around, taking odd jobs, bouncing from studio to studio. Your mother and I have been patient because we love you. But we can't afford patience anymore. When you leave this house tomorrow, you either walk tawa rd a real job or you walk away from us. I read at him. You're giving me an ultimatum. I'm giving you a choice. It's the only thing left I can give you. I looked at my mother. She didn't say anything. She just nodded, a small, defeated gesture, and turned back to the sink. The dishes in there had been sitting for days. She wasn't washing them. She was just standing there, holding the edge of the counter like she was steadying herself. I thought about my grandmother, about the way she used to hold my hand when I was a kid and tell me to never let anyone tell me what I was worth. She'd had dementia for 3 years now. Some days she recognized me. Some days she called me by my grandfather's name. The last time I saw her, she looked straight through me like I was a window. "We can't pay her nursing home bill," my mother said to the dirty dishes. "I called the facility today. They're going to release her bed if we don't make a payment by Friday. There are other families waiting. People who can pay." The clock on the wall ticked. It was a cheap battery-operated thing that had been there since before I was born. The second hand made a sound like a tiny hammer striking an anvil. "I'll figure it out," I said. And I didn't know if I meant the money or the job or my grandmother or all of it. I just knew I had to say something. "Figure it out tonight," my father said. "Because tomorrow morning, if you haven't decided, I'm making the decision for you. I'm throwing away your supplies. Every last tube of paint, every brush, every canvas. I'll do it myself."
I saw the muscle in his jaw twitch.
He meant it. I'd never seen him look so tired, so worn down. This wasn't anger. This was exhaustion, pure and deep. He'd been CA-ing the family for so long that his back had broken somewhere along the way, and he couldn't feel it anymore. I walked out of the kitchen. I didn't go to my room. I went to the backyard, to the small shed where I'd set up a makeshift studio. It was cold out, autumn creeping in, the air smelling like dead leaves and damp wood. I unlocked the shed and flipped on the light. Rows of canvases leaned against the walls. Half-finished portraits, sketches, studies. My grandmother's face in charcoal from 2 years ago, when she could still laugh and remember the punchline. A landscape I'd painted of the lake we used to visit every summer. A portrait of my parents from their wedding photo, something I'd root as a gift and never finished. I walked to the corner where I kept my tubes of paint. The good ones, the expensive ones I'd saved for. I picked up a tube of cadmium red and turned it over in my hands. This was it. This was what I had to show for 4 years of work that my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a direct message from a woman named Vivian. She'd found my page through a Shaw-read post. She wrote, "I saw your portrait of the golden retriever. My dog, Gus, passed away last week. I've been a wreck. Your work captures something I can't describe. Can you do a commission for me? I'll pay whatever you ask." I didn't respond. I just looked at the message. Whatever you ask. 2 years ago, I would have asked for 100. But I'd reneged something since then. I'd reneged about SCA city and desperation and the strange economics of grief. People who are hurting don't haggle. They just need someone to see them. I wrote back. $350 half up front. It'll take me 2 weeks. She responded in less than a minute. Done. Send me your payment info. I leaned against the workbench, my hands shaking slightly. $350. It was more than I'd ever charged for anything. And she'd agreed without question. Suddenly, my father's ultimatum didn't feel like the end. It felt like a rooting gun that I root packing. Not to leave, not yet, but to organize. I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app. I root writing down every commission lead I'd ever been given. Every person who'd said, "I'd love something like that someday." Every follow-up I'd never had the confidence to chase. By midnight, I had 37 names. Some were friends of friends. Some were strangers who'd like to post. Some were people I'd met at a F.A. Ramirez Marquette 3 summers ago. I root writing messages. Professional. YRM. Slightly desperate. "Hi there, I hope this isn't too four-way road. I was wondering if you'd consider letting me do a portrait for you. I worked until 2 in the morning, my eyes burning, my thumb aching from typing." I sent the last message and closed the app. Then I walked back into the house, and up the stairs, my parents' bedroom door was closed. I could hear my father snoring through the wall. My mother was probably lying awake, ring at the ceiling, counting the hours until the bank opened. I walked into my room and looked at the pile of supplies I'd been gathering for years. Brushes from every price point. Palettes stained with ancient colors. A stack of linen canvases that cost more than I wanted to admit. I took out my phone again and looked at the gallery I'd built online. 100 followers. 200. It wasn't much, but it was something. And then I saw it. A post from my cousin Emily. A photo of the engagement ring, the diamond catching the flash. The caption, I said yes. Can't wait to be a Mrs. Counting down the days to the big day. So excited to START planning and share this with our amazing families. Love you all. The comments were a flood of congratulatory emojis. My aunt had written, my baby girl, with a string of hearts. My mother had written, so happy for you, sweet ART. I scrolled down, and then I saw the other comment. From my mother's sister, my Aunt Linda. She'd written, we're so thrilled. And the wedding is going to be gorgeous. I'll send the vendor estimates to your mom tomorrow. The flowers alone are going to be a major line item, but it's worth it for our girl. I felt my stomach tighten. My parents were drowning in my grandmother's medical bills and their own mounting debt, and they were being asked to pay for flowers. For one day that I picked up a brush, the oldest one I owned, the one with the worn-down bristles. I'd had it since my first year of ART school, before I dropped out. It had painted more than 100 pieces. I thought about throwing it against the wall. I thought about walking into the kitchen and screaming at my parents to open their eyes. But I didn't. I opened my phone again and went to my grandmother's nursing home. I looked up the contact information for the billing department. I sent an email asking for the total balance and a breakdown of what was owed. Then I route looking at the calendar. I had 6 weeks until the wedding. I had 3 weeks to make enough money to cover my grandmother's bill and put down the deposit on a proper studio. I had 6 days before my father cleaned out the shed. I didn't sleep at all that night. At 6:47 a.m., I heard my father's footsteps on the stairs. The floorboards creaked in the same places they'd creaked for 30 years. He walked past my door and paused. I could see the shadow of his feet through the crack. I held my breath. He didn't knock. He just stood there for a long moment. Then he walked back toward the kitchen. That I got up, threw on a hoodie, and walked downstairs. The coffee was freshly brewed. My mother was sitting at the table. Ring at her phone. My father was leaning against the counter. Arms crossed. We told you what we needed, he said. What's your answer? I was holding my phone in my hand. In the other hand, I was holding a folder of printed emails, the responses I'd gotten to my messages. 7 people had already said yes. 4 of them had paid up front. I put the folder on the table. It landed with a soft thud. Read these, I said. My clients. They've already paid me for work I'm going to do this week. In my shed. My mother reached for the folder. She opened it, her eyes scanning the emails. I saw her face change. It was slight, almost imperceptible. But I saw it. That's not enough, my father said. A few $100s. That's pocket change. Read the last one, I said. My mother flipped to the bottom. It was the email from Vivian, the woman with the dog. The one who'd agreed to pay $350. $350 for one painting, my mother said slowly. That's more than I made in a week at the hospital. Now, I said, imagine if I did 3 of those in a week. Imagine if I did 5. My father didn't say anything. He took the folder from my mother and read it himself. I watched the tension in his shoulders ease. Just a fraction. One more chance, I said. Give me 1 month. 1 month to prove that this works. If I can't pay for Grand's bill by the end of the month, I'll close the studio myself. I'll get a job in a Wari house. I'll do whatever you want. But give me 1 month. My mother looked at my father. They had a silent conversation. I wasn't part of 1 month, my father said finally. But we're keeping the shed locked.
You get 1 key.
You get 1 chance. And if you fail, you don't just close the studio. You leave. For good. I nodded. Agreed. My father handed the folder back to me. His hand was shaking. It had never shook before. I walked out of the kitchen and into the backyard road. The sky was gray, heavy with October clouds. I unlocked the shed and stepped inside. I had 1 month. I had 7 commissions. I had a grandmother who needed me and a family that was falling apart. I picked up my worn brush and route mixing colors. The first week of my 1-month deadline felt like holding my breath underwater. I woke up at 5 every morning, before my father left for work, and I walked past the kitchen without making eye contact. The coffee pot was always full, and my mother always had a bowl of oatmeal waiting on the counter. She didn't say anything. She just left it there, like a peace offering I wasn't ready to accept. I'd set up my shed with a space heater that BA Rely worked and a lamp I'd salvaged from the GA Rage. The first two portraits were of a couple's elderly beagle. They'd sent me a dozen photos, all taken in different lighting, different angles. The dog had a white patch on its chest that was almost completely gray in the newer photos. I spent the first 3 days just mixing colors, trying to find the exact shade of that patch. It wasn't about accuracy. It was about truth. The truth of the dog's age, the truth of the dog's eyes, the truth of what it meant to love something that was slowly leaving you. The third day, my mother came out to the shed. I saw her through the window, walking slowly across the RD, holding a mug of tea. She knocked on the door frame, even though the door was open. "I brought you something," she said. "It's chamomile. You used to like that when you were a kid." "I still do," I said, not looking up from my work. "You can set it on the bench." She set it down but didn't leave. She stood there for a while, watching me paint. I could feel her eyes on my back, weighing me. She hadn't seen me work in years. Not really. The last time she'd watched me paint, I was 17, working on a self-portrait for a high school ART class. She'd said it looked RK. She'd said, "Are you sad, honey?" And I'd said, "No, Mom. I'm just painting." Now she stood in silence. The brush moved across the canvas, and I felt her relax, just slightly. "Your father went to the bank today," she said finally. "He talked to them about a payment plan. They're not budging. They said we need to pay the full back balance by the end of next month, or they're going to STA/RT the foreclosure process." The brush stopped. I turned to look at her. "You didn't tell me that. I'm telling you now." She wrapped her hands around the mug she was holding, even though it was empty. "He didn't want me to. He said it would make you panic. But I think you have a right to know. The house isn't just his. It's yours, too, in a way." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What about Grand?" She shook her head. "We're still behind on her bill. We've been working with the facility to set up a payment schedule, but they're not patient. They've got a waiting list a mile long. Families who can pay in cash, up front. They don't CA about us." I looked at the beagle on the canvas. The eyes were almost finished. They had that soft, slightly cloudy look that old dogs get. I realized I was painting the dog's death as much as its life. I was painting the grief the owners were already CA-ing. "I'll cover it," I said. "Grand's bill. I've got 2 more commissions coming in this week. I'm ridging 3 times what I used to." My mother's face tightened. "You can't RG people that much. It's not fair." "Mom, fair is what keeps a roof over our heads. Fair is what pays for her CA. I'm not running a charity. I'm running a business." She opened her mouth to a ragu, then closed it. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't worry or disappointment. It was uncertainty. She didn't know how to talk to me anymore. She didn't know what I was becoming. "I'll bring you dinner," she said, and she walked back to the house. The 4th day, I got an email from my Aunt Linda. It was addressed to the whole family, a group chain with subject line, "Wedding planning update." She'd attached a spreadsheet. A detailed, color-coded spreadsheet with every expense. The venue, the catering, the photographer, the florist, the DJ, the wedding favors, the invitations, the transportation. The total at the bottom was staggering. My cousin Emily's contribution was listed as bride's family covers, flowers, photographer, florist. The estimated total for flowers was $4,200. The photographer was $3,800. My aunt had written a note at the bottom. "We're asking each family unit to contribute according to their ability. Please let me know what you can manage by Friday." I closed the email and went back to painting. The next morning, my father came out to the shed. He didn't knock. He just walked in and stood in the corner. It felt like an invasion. The shed was small enough that his presence filled the whole space. "You got the email," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah." "What are you thinking?" I put down my brush. "I'm thinking it's not my problem." He shifted his weight. "It's the family's problem. It's your mother's problem. When your aunt asks for help, we help. That's how it works.
Dad.
She's asking for $4,000 RS for flowers. Flowers that will be dead in 3 days. Meanwhile, Gran is sitting in a beige room watching a parking lot because we can't afford her CRE. And the bank is threatening to take this house. And I'm in here every day trying to dig us out, and all I hear is how I'm not doing enough. How I need to be more responsible. How my cousin's wedding matters more than Gran's life. The words hung in the air. I saw my father's face turn red, then pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't say your cousin's wedding is more important, he said finally. I just said we help. That's what families do. When was the last time Emily helped us? I asked. When was the last time she came to visit Gran? When was the last time she asked how we were doing? She's been planning this wedding for 2 years, and she's never once asked about Gran. Not once. My father looked down at the floor, at the paint splatters that had dried into permanent stains. Emily is young. She's excited. We shouldn't punish her for that. I'm not punishing her. I'm just not paying for it. He nodded slowly. Then he did something I didn't expect. He walked over to my workbench and picked up the portrait of the beagle. He studied it, turning it Tawa RD the light. This dog, he said. It's old, isn't it? Yeah. He's 15. You can see it in the eyes. The way the light hits the lens. It's like he knows. Most dogs do. They know when it's time. My father set the painting down ruefully. Your mother and I have been looking at pictures of Gran. From when she was young. Before we got married. She was so beautiful. And she had this laugh, you know. A loud, crazy laugh. It would fill up a whole room. I nodded. I remembered that laugh. It had faded over the ARS, like a photograph left in the sun. I see that in your paintings, he said. I see the soul of the person who's looking at it. I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know that was something a person could do. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, watching him. I'm not going to hold you to the 1-month deadline, he said quietly. I never should have said that. I was SCA red. We were both SCA red. And I took it out on you. You were right, I said. I should have been more responsible. I should have figured this out sooner.
No.
He shook his head. We should have believed in you sooner. We should have asked what you needed instead of telling you what you should be. He walked out of the shed. I watched him go, his shoulders a little straighter than they'd been when he came in. I sat down, picked up my brush, and STA root mixing colors again. To the 5th day, I delivered the beagle portrait. The couple lived in a small house in the suburbs, the kind of place with a well-maintained lawn and a wooden fence. The woman opened the door with TRS already in her eyes. She didn't even wait for me to say anything. She just grabbed the painting and held it to her chest. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, it's him. It's really him. Her husband came up behind her, his face pale and drawn. He passed away yesterday, he said quietly. We knew it was coming, but we wanted him to have a home. We wanted to see him the way you saw him, the way we saw him. I felt my throat tighten. I'd painted 100 portraits, maybe more, but I'd never delivered one the day after a client's dog had died. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, holding my empty frame. The woman set the painting on the wall. It was a good painting. I allowed myself that small pride. It was the best work I'd ever done. My sister recommended you, the woman said. She said you were the best. She said you see things other people miss. I blinked. Your sister, Vivian. Vivian Church. She said you painted her mother's portrait 2 years ago. The one with the roses. I didn't remember a Vivian Church. I didn't remember any portrait with roses. But I nodded anyway.
Yeah.
Of course. Vivian. She smiled through her TRS. Small world. She said you were struggling a little, that you needed the work. She told us to be patient with you. But I can see now that you're going to do just fine. I left their house in a daze. I hadn't remembered a Vivian, because there was no Vivian. I'd never painted a portrait with roses. Someone had lied. Someone had sent me this client under a false name. That I pulled out my phone and opened my messages. The woman who'd contacted me about the golden retriever. The one who'd said her dog, Gus, had just passed away. Her name was Vivian. But the portrait she'd referenced, the one with the roses, that wasn't mine. Did I send her a message? Did you send that couple to me? The one with the beagle, she responded in minutes. Yes. I felt bad for not using my real name. I'm actually your Aunt Linda's friend. I saw your work at her house. She keeps a little painting of Emily's childhood cat in her foyer. I could see you had talent. I figured you might need a hand. Hope you're not angry. My Aunt Linda. The same aunt who'd sent the wedding spreadsheet. The same aunt who was asking the family to chip in thousands of dollars for flowers. She had a painting of Emily's cat in her foyer. She'd kept it there for years. I called my mother. Mom, I said. Why didn't you tell me Aunt Linda has one of my paintings? Silence. Then, she bought it at a craft fair, honey. Years ago. She didn't want to make a big deal about it. She sent me a client. A client who paid me $350 under a fake name. More silence. Linda has a lot of friends. She's well connected. She probably just wanted to help. I closed my eyes. My aunt had been quietly supporting me without ever saying a word. And now she was asking the family to help pay for a wedding that I could rely afford to attend. That night, I sat down in my shed and looked at my bank account. The balance was growing. Slowly, but it was growing. I'd made more in the last week than I'd made in the past 3 months combined. I could pay Grand's bill. I could keep the house. I could do all of it, but I couldn't do it and pay for Emily's wedding. I picked up my phone and called my aunt. She answered on the second ring. Linda, I said. It's your nephew. I know who it is, she said warmly. I saw you painted Mrs. H.A. Ripper's beagle. She called me in TRS. She said it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. I have a question, I said. The wedding. The flowers. The photographer. The $3,000 you're asking my parents to contribute.
Can you afford it without them? She paused.
Well, we could manage, I suppose. But it's a family event. We wanted everyone to be part of it. Shari the joy. The joy, I repeated. My parents are 2 months behind on the mortgage. They can't afford to shari the joy. They can rely afford to breathe. Another pause. Your mother didn't tell me. She didn't want to burden you. Then she shouldn't have. Linda's voice was firmer now. If they can't contribute, they can't contribute. I'll tell Emily. We'll adjust. I felt something loosen in my chest. Thank you, I said. And thank you for sending me the client. She laughed. You're welcome. But don't thank me. Your paintings thanked themselves. I hung up and looked at the half-finished portrait on my easel. It was a young woman, a teenager, with her hair in a ponytail and a dog curled at her feet. The commission had come in that morning. $400, half paid up front. ISTA root painting. The colors felt different tonight. Lighter. The weight on my shoulders was a little less heavy. My mother came out to the shed at 11 o'clock. She was ryeing a plate of sandwiches and a thermos of tea. I brought you dinner, she said. You haven't eaten. I haven't been hungry. Sit down.
Eat. Sit.
She pulled up a stool and sat across from me. For a while, we didn't say anything. We just ate sandwiches in the dim light of the shed. You called Linda, she said finally. Yeah. Thank you. Don't thank me, I said. I just told her the truth. She nodded. Your father and I talked tonight. He's proud of you. We both agree. We've always been proud of you. We just didn't know how to say it. It's okay, I said. I didn't know how to be what you needed. She reached out and touched my hand. Her fingers were cold, the skin thin and papery. You're exactly what we needed, she said. We just didn't know it. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone. My video from last week, the one of the golden retriever painting, had been read by a major pet adoption agency. The views had doubled overnight. My follower count had jumped to 5,000. ISTA read at the screen, not breathing. 5,000 strangers were watching me paint. 5,000 strangers were waiting to see what I would do next. I went downstairs. My father was at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper. He looked up when I walked in. Good news, he asked. I held up my phone. 5,000 followers. He didn't say anything. He just put down the newspaper and walked over to me. He looked at the screen, then at me. And then he did something I hadn't seen him do in years. He smiled. 5,000 followers, my mother's voice cut through the kitchen from the doorway. She was still in her robe, her hair uncombed, but her eyes were wide and sharp. 5,000 people re-watching you paint. It's not that many, I said, though I knew it was. For me, it was everything. It's just a number. It doesn't mean anything until they start buying. My father had gone back to his newspaper, but I could see him watching me over the top of it. The smile was gone, replaced by his usual cautious expression. But something had shifted. The air in the kitchen felt different, less heavy. Your aunt called this morning, my mother said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. She told Emily that we can't contribute to the wedding. Emily took it hard. She called me crying. I felt a pang of guilt. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, no. My mother held up her hand. You were right. We couldn't afford it. And Emily needs to leah our end that the world doesn't revolve around her. She's 30, years old. She can figure it out. I read at her. I couldn't remember the last time my mother had taken my side against the rest of the family. It felt strange, almost disorienting. Linda told me what you said to her. My mother continued. About Gran. About the house. About how we've been drowning. She set down her coffee and walked over to the table. She sat down across from me, and my father folded his newspaper and set it aside. I lied to you, she said quietly. When I said I was proud of you, I wasn't. I was resentful. I thought you were wasting your life. I thought you were choosing art over responsibility. And I was angry because I never had the luxury of making that choice. I worked in that hospital for 27 years. I hated every minute of it. But I did it because we needed the money. Because we had to survive. She took a breath. And I wanted you to be miserable, too. I wanted you to understand what it felt like to give up what you loved for something that didn't matter. And I'm ashamed of that. The kitchen was silent. The clock on the wall ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Mom, I said. I never knew you hated the hospital. I never told anyone. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Not your father. Not your grandmother. Nobody. Because you don't get to complain when you're keeping a family fed. You just do the work and you keep your mouth shut. My father reached over and put his hand on hers. It was a small gesture, almost instinctive. But I saw her grip his fingers. So when I see you painting, she said, when I see you doing something that makes you feel alive, it reminds me of everything I gave up. And it makes me angry.
Not at you.
At myself. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent years thinking my mother was cold, dismissive, incapable of understanding my choices. I'd never considered that she understood all too well. That my choices were a mirror for her own regrets. I'm not giving up, I said. I'm never giving up. But I need you to stop telling me I'm making a mistake. I need you to trust me. She nodded slowly. I can do that. My father read his throat. I called the nursing home this morning. They're willing to work with us on a payment plan. They said if we can make a down payment of $1,500 by the end of the month, they'll hold her bed for another 6 months. $1,500. I had $1,200 in my bank account. I'd been saving for a proper studio, a place with windows and heat, a place I could actually work in comfort.
I can cover it, I said.
I have enough. My mother looked at me RPLY. That's your rent money. You need a place to live. I've got a place to live. I gestured around the kitchen. I'm here.
I'm fine.
And Gran needs the CA more than I need a studio. My father's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. We'll pay you back, he said. Every penny. No, you won't, I said. Because I'm not lending it. I'm giving it. That's what families do. I walked out of the kitchen and went to my shed. I opened my phone and transferred the money. $1,500 gone in 3 taps. I looked at the balance. -400. I'd overdraft my account. I'd have to sell something just to eat for the rest of the week. But Gran was safe. I picked up my brush and route painting. I couldn't afford to stop. I couldn't afford to think. I just painted. The week blurred into a haze of caffeine and canvases. I finished 4 more commissions. The money trickled in, just enough to keep me afloat. My follower count climbed to 12,000. People were sending me messages from all over the country.
Pet owners, mostly.
People who'd lost something and wanted to remember it. One message stood out. It was from a woman named Patricia. She lived in the city, a few hours away. She wrote, "I saw your video. I have a painting I'd like to commission, but it's not of an animal. It's of a person. My daughter. She passed away 2 years ago. I've never found anyone who can capture her. But I think you can." I wrote back immediately. "I'd be honored. Can you send me some photos?" She sent me a dozen photos. The girl was young, maybe 16. She had dark hair and a wide smile and eyes that seemed to hold a secret. She was wearing a green dress in most of the photos, a dress with little white flowers on it. I could see her mother in the way she held her shoulders. I could see the grief in the way the mother had taken the photos, framing each shot like a fairy well. Her name was Lily, Patricia wrote. She loved flowers, especially daisies. She used to pick them in the backyard and put them in her hair.
Está RT sketching.
The face took shape under my fingers, soft and young and full of light. I mixed colors for the green dress, the skin, the shadows. I painted for hours without stopping. By the 3rd day, I had a rough draft. I sent Patricia a photo of the progress. She responded within minutes. "That's her. That's exactly her. I can't believe it." She paid me in full. $600. It was the most I'd ever been paid for a single piece, but I didn't celebrate. I couldn't, because that afternoon, my cousin Emily showed up at the house. I heard the car before I saw it. The engine was loud, a sporty little thing that sounded out of place in our quiet neighborhood. I looked out the shed window and saw her getting out, dressed in designer leggings and a cashmere sweater, her hair perfectly curled. My mother answered the door. I could hear their voices through the thin walls of the shed. "I'm just saying, Mom," Emily said, her voice high and strained. "Aunt Linda told me that you're not contributing to the wedding."
And I don't understand why.
"You're my family. You're supposed to support me." My mother's voice was calm, measured. "We can't afford it, Emily. We've told you that. We're behind on the mortgage. Your grandmother's CA is costing us thousands. We have nothing left. But you're paying for his art supplies." Emily's voice rose. "You're paying for his stupid paintings. I saw his video. He has thousands of followers. He's making money. Why can't he contribute to the wedding? He's family, too." I stepped out of the shed and walked toward the house. The door was open. I could see Emily standing in the entryway, her arms crossed, her face flushed. "He can't contribute," my mother said. "He's been helping us. He paid for your grandmother's nursing home bill. He's been supporting this family." Emily turned and saw me. Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, there he is. The famous artist. You know, I've been watching your videos. You're not that good. You just got lucky." I felt the words hit me like a slap. But I didn't flinch. "I got lucky," I repeated. "Is that what you think?" "I think you're a leech," she said. "I think you've been mooching off your parents for years, and now you're pretending to be successful because you got a few followers on the internet. It's pathetic." My mother stepped between us. "That's enough, Emily." "No, it's not." Emily's voice cracked. "I've been planning this wedding for 2 years.
2 years.
And my own family can't even show up for me. But he gets to paint dogs and suddenly he's the hero." I walked past my mother and stopped in front of Emily. I could see the TRS in her eyes. They weren't angry TRS. They were hurt TRS. She wasn't mad at me. She was SCA red. SCA read that her perfect wedding wasn't going to be perfect. SCA read that she wasn't going to get the attention she'd been counting on. "Emily," I said, "I'm not the enemy. I'm your cousin. And I'm not trying to take anything away from you. But I can't afford to pay for your wedding. I'm rely keeping myself afloat." "But you have money," she said. "I saw your bank account. You posted a screenshot. You're making more than me." I read at her. I had never posted a screenshot of my bank account. I'd posted a photo of my payment app, a small notification that a client had paid. But the amount had been visible. $400 RS. I'd thought nothing of it. Emily, I said slowly, that was a single payment. It's not what I make consistently. It's not a salary. It's a commission. But you got more. She was crying now, her makeup rooting to SMEAR. You got more. I looked at your page. People repaying you hundreds of dollars RS for one painting. You could help. You just won't. My mother put her hand on my arm. Honey, she said to Emily, we love you. We support you. But we can't do this right now. We have to take care of ourselves. Emily stood there for a long moment. Then she turned and walked out the door. She didn't say goodbye. She just got in her car and drove away. I watched her go. I felt a strange mixture of guilt and relief. Guilt, because she was hurting. Relief because it was over. My mother turned to me. Are you okay? Yeah, I said. I think so. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bed, ring at the sailboat wallpaper, thinking about Emily's words. She'd called me a leech. She'd said I was pretending to be successful. And part of me wondered if she was right. I got up and walked to the shed. The portrait of Lily was waiting for me, half finished, her green dress glowing under the lamp. I picked up my brush and root painting again. At 3 a.m, I heard a knock on the shed door. I opened it. My father was standing there, holding a cup of coffee. Couldn't sleep either, he said. Thought you might need this. He handed me the coffee. I took it and drank. It was black, bitter, just the way I liked it. Emily's father called me, he said. He's furious. He thinks we're abandoning her. Really? No. He leaned against the doorframe. We're just choosing ourselves for once. That's not abandonment. That's survival. I nodded. She'll get over it. She'll have to. He looked at the portrait on my easel. Is that the girl, the one who passed? Yeah. Lily. Her mother commissioned it. It's beautiful, he said. You can see her soul in the eyes. I looked at the painting. I said. I try to see the person, not just the face. My father was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I spent years not seeing you. I saw a kid who was making mistakes. I didn't see the person you were becoming. Dad, no, he said. Let me say this. You are not a leech. You are not a failure. You are one of the most determined people I've ever known. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. He walked away, leaving me standing in the doorway of my shed, holding his coffee, looking at the portrait of a girl I'd never met. I went back to work. The next morning, I woke up to a notification on my phone. A message from Patricia, Lily's mother. She'd posted the finished painting on her page, tagged me, and written a long, emotional caption about her daughter and how this painting had brought her back. The post went viral. By noon, my follower count had doubled. By 6 o'clock, I had over 100 commission requests. People were offering to pay in advance. Some were offering more than I'd ever charged. I sat in my shed, ring at my phone, trying to make sense of it. My father's words echoed in my head. You are one of the most determined people I've ever known. Rude, responding to the messages that I had work to do. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 3 days. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. to a flood of notifications, and I'd scroll through them with one eye open, my thumb swiping past messages I couldn't possibly answer fast enough. There were over 200 commission requests. Some were from people who'd found me through Patricia's post. Some were from people who'd seen the Shari from the adoption agency. And some were from people who'd been following me for months, quiet observers who'd finally decided to speak up. I sat on my bed at 6 a.m, the light from the window casting long shadows across the floor, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt hope. It was small and fragile, like a glass ornament on a high shelf. But it was there. My mother knocked on my door. She didn't wait for me to answer. She just opened it and walked in, carrying a tray with toast and eggs. Your phone's been going off all night, she said. I thought you might be hungry. Thanks, Mom. I took the tray and set it on my lap. She sat down on the edge of my bed, her weight dipping the mattress. Are you going to answer all of them? She asked, eventually. I've got to prioritize. Some of them are re-asking for portraits of family members. Some of them are re-asking for pets. A few are re-asking for landscapes, which I'm not as good at, but I can try. She was quiet for a moment. How much are you going to charge? I hesitated. I don't know yet. I've been charging 300 to 400 for portraits, but some of these people are offering double that. I feel like I should be fair, but I also need to make a living. Charge what you're worth, she said. Don't sell yourself short because you're afraid people won't pay. They will. They already are. I nodded. I'd been thinking the same thing, but hearing her say it made it feel real. She'd spent 27 years selling herself short, hating every minute of it. And now she was telling me to do the opposite. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom, I said. I need to ask you something. Anything. What would you do if you had a second chance, if you could go back and choose something else? She looked away, out the window. The backyard was gray and quiet. The trees except for a few stubborn leaves. I'd have been a nurse, she said. Not just a nursing assistant. A real nurse. I loved the patients. I loved the work. But I didn't have the money for school, and your father's job didn't pay enough, and by the time we could have afforded it, I was too old. You're not too old. She laughed, a short, sad sound. Honey, I'm 62. My knees hurt. My back hurts. I can't stand for 12 hours anymore. Then do something else.
Teach.
Volunteer. Find something that makes you happy. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I've got you. That makes me happy enough. I didn't argue. I just squeezed her hand back. The next few days were a blur of emails, payment transfers, and color mixing. I'd transformed my shed into a proper workspace, with a new lamp and a space heater that actually worked. My father had built me a drying rack out of scrap wood. My mother had brought me a small fridge for drinks and snacks. I was still sleeping on the couch in America's APA met most nights, but I was rooting to think about finding a place of my own. On the 5th day, I got a call from a local gallery owner. His name was David Chen, and he'd been running a small gallery in the ARTS district for 20 years. He'd seen my work online and wanted to offer me a show. Just one room, he said. But it's a good room. Nice light. Good foot traffic. I think your stuff would sell well here. I almost dropped the phone. A show like a real show. Like a real show. You'd have to commit to at least 12 pieces. I'd take 30% commission on anything that sells. You cover the framing and the opening night costs. I don't know if I can afford the framing, I said. I've got a lot of commissions right now, and I'm trying to save up for a studio. David laughed. Everyone's trying to save up for a studio, but this is how you get there. You take the show, you get your name out there, and you build from there. I asked for a week to think about it. He said okay, but he was holding the room for me. I hung up and sat in my shed, STA ring at the wall of half-finished canvases to 12 pieces. I had enough time for the commissions I already had. But if I said no, I might never get another chance. That evening, I was sitting in my shed, sketching a new portrait, when I heard our pull into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw a familiar sporty car Emily. She got out slowly, hesitating before walking tower the house. I put down my brush and walked out. She saw me and stopped. Hey, she said. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. Hey, I said. She shoved her hands in her jacket pockets. I came to apologize. I was awful to you. I was awful to your mom. I shouldn't have said those things. I leaned against the door frame. No, you shouldn't have. She winced. I know. I got so caught up in the wedding that I forgot other people have problems too. I've been so focused on myself that I haven't been paying attention. And then I heard about Gran. I didn't know it was that bad. It's bad, I said. But we're managing. Emily nodded. I talked to my mom. She told me about the nursing home bill. About the mortgage. I didn't know any of it. She never told me. Your mom didn't want to worry you. Maybe that was a mistake. Emily stepped closer. I'm sorry about what I said. About you being a leech. I don't think that. I was just angry and SCA red, and I took it out on you. I get it. I said. Weddings are stressful. They are, but they're not more important than family.
Not really.
We stood there for a moment, the cold air settling around us. Are you coming to the wedding? She asked. I thought about it. I thought about the stress, the drama, the awkward RD conversations with relatives I saw. But I also thought about my grandmother, who'd always loved weddings. She'd been the one to dance at every family gathering, the one who'd tell stories about her own wedding day until we all fell asleep. Yeah, I said. I'll be there. Emily smiled. It was a small, tentative smile, but it was real. Good, she said. Because I was going to ask you to do a live painting at the reception. But I get it if you're too busy. I blinked. A live painting, like you'd set up an easel and paint the first dance or something. It'd be a nice keepsake. And I'd pay you. Full price. No family discount. I couldn't help but laugh. Emily, I don't know if I can do a live painting. I've never done one before. Then it's a learning experience. She grinned. You're the only artist in the family. You've got to use it. I hesitated, but I could see in her eyes that she was trying. She was trying to include me, to make things right. I'll do it, I said. But I'm charging double. She laughed.
Fine.
Double. You're still cheaper than the photographer. After she left, I went back to my shed and looked at the commission list. I'd been avoiding it, but I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't do everything. I couldn't paint everyone's portraits and do the gallery show and the live painting and still take care of myself. I picked up my phone and called David Chin. Hi, David, I said. I'll take the show. Great. I'll send you the contract. One thing, I said. I need 8 weeks. I've got a lot on my plate right now. 8 weeks, he repeated. That's longer than I wanted. But I'll work with you. You're worth it. I hung up and sat back in my chair. 8 weeks. I had 8 weeks to paint 12 pieces. My grandmother's salary was paid for through the end of the year. The mortgage was current. And my parents were finally breathing easy. But I was exhausted. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks. My hands were stained with paint, and my back ached from leaning over canvases. I couldn't keep this pace. I had to find a way to work SMA router, not just hard. The next morning, I got an unexpected visitor. It was Marcus, my friend from the print shop. He walked into my shed without knocking, holding a CA Redboe Road box. I brought you some supplies, he said. And I came to offer you a deal. I looked inside the box. It was filled with high-quality paper, specialty paints, and a set of brushes I'd never been able to afford. Where did you get this? I asked. I have connections. People owe me favors. He set the box down on my workbench. Here's the deal. I'm doing a pop-up gallery at my shop next month. I want you to be the featured artist. You bring 10 pieces. I'll handle the setup, the marketing, the refreshments. We split the profits down the middle. Marcus, I'm already doing a show at David Chen's gallery. Then you'll have practice for mine. Think of it as a dress rehearsal. I wanted to say no. I was already overwhelmed. But Marcus had a way of making things sound simple. He'd let me crash on his couch for 3 weeks without asking for a dime. The least I could do was help him with his pop-up. Okay, I said. I'll do it. But I can't promise more than 5 pieces. 5 is perfect. He clapped me on the shoulder. You're going to be a big deal someday. I can feel it. After he left, I sat down and looked at the box of supplies. It was a generous gift, but it also meant more work, more pressure, more expectations. That I picked up my brush and sta root painting that night. My mother came out to the shed. She was holding a small photograph, old and worn at the edges. She handed it to me. Your grandmother gave this to me years ago, she said. It's her wedding photo. I looked at the image. My grandparents were young, standing in front of a church, both of them smiling in that stiff, formal way people used to photograph. My grandmother was wearing a simple white dress, the kind you could buy off the rack. My grandfather was in a military uniform. She didn't have much, my mother said. She was poor. They were both poor. But they loved each other. That's all that mattered. Why are you showing me this? She took a deep breath. Because I want you to paint it. For the gallery show. A portrait of their wedding. I want people to see what real love looks like. I looked at the photograph, then back at her. Mom, that's not what I usually do. I paint people's pets. I paint their families. I don't do historical portraits.
You do whatever you want, she said.
That's what makes you good.
But this is important to me.
This is the last thing I'll ever ask of you. I didn't know what to say. I just took the photograph and set it on my workbench. Okay, I said. I'll do it. She nodded and walked back to the house. I stayed in the shed until 3 a.m, working on a new portrait. I'd STA root 5 pieces that week, but none of them felt finished. Something was missing. Some spa arcade of life that I couldn't quite capture. I thought about my grandmother, about her laugh, the way it filled a room, about the way she used to hold my hand when I was little and tell me I could be anything I wanted to be. I looked at the photo of her wedding day. She looked so young, so hopeful. She had no idea what was coming. The hardships, the losses, the grief. But she had love. She had my grandfather. And for a while, that was enough. I sta root mixing colors. I needed to capture the light in her eyes, the certainty in her stance. I needed to show the world what my mother had seen in that photograph. By dawn, I had a rough draft. It wasn't finished. It wasn't even close. But it was a STA. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I was exhausted. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was on the right track. My phone buzzed. A message from Patricia, Lily's mother. I got a call from a publisher today. They want to put your painting of Lily in an ART book, a collection of memorial portraits. They're paying $5,000 Rs. I sta read at the screen. $5,000 Rs. I'd never made that much in my entire life. I called her immediately. Patricia, you serious? Dead serious. They want to feature your work alongside other artists. They said it was one of the most emotionally resonant pieces they'd ever seen.
I didn't know what to say.
I just sat there. The phone pressed to my STA ring at the portrait of Lily on my easel. Congratulations, Patricia said. You deserve this. You really do. I hung up and walked out of the shed. The sun was coming up, casting long golden light across the road. I could see my mother through the kitchen window making coffee. My father was at the table, reading his newspaper. I walked into the house and sat down across from them. I got some news. I said. They both looked up. I just sold a painting for $5,000 Rs. My mother dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but she didn't even look down. She just sta read at me, her face a mixture of shock and pride. My father set down his newspaper. He was smiling. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in years. Tell us everything, he said, and I did. I sat at the kitchen table with my parents, the morning light streaming through the window, and I told them everything. The publisher's offer. The $5,000 Rs. The ART book. My mother had stopped sta ring at the broken coffee cup on the floor. She was just looking at me, her eyes wet, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the table. $5,000 Rs, she repeated. For one painting. For one painting that Patricia commissioned. I said. She's the one who's getting the payment. But the publisher wants to feature my work. The exposure alone is worth more than the money. My father leaned four-way road. When do you get paid? I don't. Patricia gets paid. But the publisher is also buying the rights to reproduce the painting. That's where I get the money. And they want more. They want to see my portfolio. They're talking about a full feature. My mother got up and walked around the table. She pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. I'm so proud of you. I hugged her back, feeling the thinness of her shoulders, the tremor in her arms. She was crying now, soft sobs that she tried to muffle against my shoulder. Okay, my father said, standing up. We need to do something. We need to celebrate. I'm making pancakes. My mother laughed through her tears. You don't make pancakes. You burn pancakes. Aaron. He was already pulling out the mixing bowl. This is a special occasion. My son is going to be in an ART book. The least I can do is try to make breakfast. I sat there, watching my father fumble with the flour and eggs, listening to my mother's quiet sniffles. The kitchen felt different, lighter. The weight that had pressed down on us for so long had STA route to lift. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was David Chen, the gallery owner. "Hey," I said, stepping away from the table to take the call. "What's up?" "I heard about the ART book," he said. "The publisher called me. They wanted to confirm that you were legitimate. I told them you were the most talented artist I've worked with in ERS. They're going to feature you in a dedicated section. They're also interested in commissioning a piece for their cover." "A cover piece for the book?" "Yep. They're offering $10,000, plus royalties on the book sales." I felt my knees go weak. I leaned against the counter. "David, I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say yes right now." "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll do it." "Good. I'll send you the details. And congratulations. You've rented it." I hung up and turned to my parents. They were both looking at me. "The pancake batter forgotten. $10,000, I said. "For the cover of the ART book." My father put down the mixing bowl. He walked over to me and put his hand on my shoulder.
"You did it," he said.
"You actually did it." "I'm not done yet," I said. "I still have to finish the pieces for the show. I still have to do the live painting at Emily's wedding. I still have 150 commissions to sort through."
"But yeah."
I did it. We ate pancakes that were burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. They were the best pancakes I'd ever had. That evening, I went back to my shed and STA route working on the cover piece. The publisher wanted something that conveyed loss and hope, something that would resonate with anyone who'd ever loved and lost. I thought about Lily, the girl in the green dress. I thought about my grandmother. STA ring out the window at the parking lot. I thought about my mother, giving up her dreams to keep her family alive. I STA root with a face. A woman's face, half in shadow, half in light. Her eyes were closed, but there was a smile on her lips. Around her, I painted flowers. Daisies, like Lily's favorites. Roses, like the ones my grandmother used to grow in her jardin. The colors were soft and warm, like a memory that was fading but not gone. I painted for hours. The sun went down. The space heater clicked on and off. My mother brought me dinner and left it on the bench without saying a word. She knew better than to interrupt. By midnight, I had the rough draft. I stood back and looked at it. The woman's face was almost finished. The flowers needed work. The background was still blank. But there was something there. Something true, that I took a photo and sent it to the publisher. They responded within minutes. "This is exactly what we wanted. Keep going." I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I was exhausted, but I'd never felt more alive. The next week was a blur of deadlines and decisions. I'd hired Americus to help me manage the commission requests. He'd set up a spreadsheet and a priority system. I'd stopped taking new orders until I'd read the backlog. I was sleeping in my shed most nights, using a sleeping bag and a pillow I'd borrowed from the house. I was eating whatever my mother brought me, and I was painting until my hands went numb. On the 10th day, I got a call from my grandmother's nursing home. The director, a woman named Margaret, told me that Gran had had a good day. She'd recognized the nurses. She'd eaten a full meal. She'd even laughed at a joke. "She asked about you." Margaret said. She said, "Where's my boy?" She said you were coming to visit. "I'll come tomorrow," I said. "I promise." I hung up and looked at the half-finished portrait of my grandparents' wedding. I hadn't touched it in days. I'd been too focused on the cover piece, on the commissions, on everything else. But my grandmother had asked about me. She'd remembered me. That was more important than any deadline. I packed up my supplies and drove to the nursing home. The drive was short, relied 20 minutes, but it felt longer. I was nervous. I always felt nervous when I visited her. What if she didn't recognize me this time? What if she called me by my grandfather's name? Again, I walked through the doors and signed in. The facility was clean, but it had that sterile smell, a mix of bleach and antiseptic and something else. Something sad. I walked to her room and knocked on the open door. She was sitting by the window, her hands folded in her lap. She was wearing a pink cardigan I remembered from years ago. It had little PRL buttons and a small stain on the sleeve. "Gran," I said softly. "It's me. It's your grandson." She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were cloudy, but they focused on me. A smile spread across her face. A real smile. "There you are," she said. "I've been waiting for you." I walked over and sat down beside her. She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was weak, but it was there. "You're so thin," she said. "You eating?" "I'm eating, Gran. I'm just busy. I'm working a lot." "Working on what? You still painting?" "Yeah, I'm still painting. I'm actually doing pretty well. I have a show coming up, and I'm going to be in a book." She nodded slowly. "I always knew you would. You always had a talent. Even when you were a little boy, you used to draw on the walls. I remember. You got in trouble for not stopping me." She laughed. It was a faint sound, like wind through dry leaves. "Your mother was so angry, but I told her it was just creativity. You can't punish creativity." I squeezed her hand. "I'm painting a portrait of you and Grandpa. Your wedding photo. Mom gave me the picture." Her eyes flickered. For a moment, she seemed to travel back way in time. "He was so handsome," she said.
So tall.
"He wore his uniform, and I wore that white dress. We had no money, but we were happy."
"You still are," I said.
"You're still happy." She looked at me, and I saw a flash of lucidity in her eyes. The dementia had clouded so much of her, but in that moment it was gone. She was just my grandmother, the woman who'd raised my mother, who'd held me as a baby, who'd taught me to see beauty in the world. "Take care of your mother," she said. "She sacrificed so much for you. For all of us. Don't forget that." "I won't, Gran. I promise." She let go of my hand and turned back to the window. The conversation was over. I sat with her for another hour, holding her hand, watching the light fade in the sky. When I left, I felt a strange sense of peace. She was still here. She was still fighting.
And she'd remembered me.
That was enough. That I went back to my shed and picked up my brush. I looked at the portrait of my grandparents' wedding, the one my mother had asked me to paint. I'd been avoiding it because I was afraid. Afraid I couldn't do it justice. Afraid I wouldn't be good enough, but my grandmother had said she always knew I had talent. She'd believed in me when no one else did. And now it was time to prove her right. Root painting. I mixed the colors fully, matching the sepia tones of the old photograph. I painted my grandfather's uniform, the crisp lines of it, the way he stood tall and proud. I painted my grandmother's dress, the simple white fabric, the flowers in her hair. I painted their faces, their young faces, full of hope and love and the certainty that they could conquer anything together. I worked until dawn. When I finished, I looked at the painting and felt tears in my eyes. It was good. It was really good. I'd captured the light in their eyes, the quiet joy in their smiles. I'd captured something that the photograph had hinted at but never fully revealed. I took a photo and sent it to my mother. She responded within seconds. "It's perfect. It's exactly what I saw in my head."
"Thank you."
I set down my phone and looked at the painting again. I'd done it. I'd honored my grandmother's memory. I'd given my mother something she'd been waiting for her whole life. The next day, Davidson called me. "I've got good news and bad news," he said. "Which do you want first?" "Bad news first." "Good. The bad news is that I need to push your show back by a month. There's a scheduling conflict with another artist. You'll have to wait." I felt a twinge of disappointment, but I pushed it down. "And the good news is that the other artist is offering to do a joint show. He wants to collaborate with you. His name is James Crawford. He's a big deal. He's been doing portraits for 20 years. He saw your work online and wants to share the space with you." James Crawford. I knew the name. He'd been featured in magazines. He'd done portraits of celebrities. He was a real artist, not someone who painted dogs for pocket change. Serious?" I said, "Dead serious."
"He's a fan.
He said your work has depth. He said you see people in a way most artists don't. I leaned against the wall. I don't know what to say. Say yes. And then get to work. You've got 2 months to prepare for the biggest show of your career. I said yes. I didn't know if I could do it. But I wasn't going to say no that night. I sat in my shed and looked at all the half-finished canvases. I had a list of commissions longer than my arm. I had a cover piece to finish. I had a portrait of my grandparents that had just been completed. And now I had a joint show with one of the most respected artists in the region. I was overwhelmed, but I was also excited. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. I heard about the show. I'm so proud of you. Also, I'm going to need you to paint me and my fiancé at the wedding. Family discount still applies, right? I laughed and wrote back. For you, double. She responded with a string of laughing emojis.
Deal.
See you in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Emily's wedding was in 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to finish everything and get ready for the wedding and the show, and the art book and the commissions. I picked up my brush and STA route painting. I didn't have time to be tired. I didn't have time to be SCA red. I just had to keep going. 3 weeks, my mother's voice cracked when I told her about the joint show. You have 3 weeks to prepare for a show with James Crawford. The James Crawford. I know it's tight, I said, stirring my coffee. But David thinks I can do it. Crawford thinks I can do it. I've got to trust them. My father walked in from the backyard, wiping his hands on a rag. He'd been fixing the fence, something he'd been putting off for months. James Crawford, he repeated. He's the one who painted that senator's portrait, right? The one that hung in the Capitol. Yeah, that's him. My father let out a low whistle. That's a big deal, son. That's really a big deal. I knew it was, but knowing it and feeling it were two different things. Right now, I just felt tired. Bone tired, the kind of tired that no amount of coffee could fix. I've got to prioritize, I said. The commissions can wait. The showpieces can't. I need to focus on the 12 pieces for the gallery. My mother nodded slowly. What about Emily's wedding? I promised her a live painting. I can't back out now, but I'll keep it simple. 1 painting, 3 hours. I can do that. My father sat down at the table. What about Gran? You need to visit her. She's been asking for you. I felt a pang of guilt. I hadn't visited her in 4 days. I'd been so caught up in the work that I'd let my visit slip. I'll go today, I said. Right after breakfast, I drove to the nursing home with a heavy heart. The sky was gray, threatening rain, and the roads were slick with the first signs of winter. I signed in and walked to her room. She was asleep when I arrived. Her face was peaceful, her hands folded on top of the blanket. She looked smaller than I remembered.
Frail.
The pink cardigan was gone, replaced by a plain white blouse. I sat down in the chair by her bed and waited. She woke up after about 20 minutes. Her eyes fluttered open, and she looked at me with a blank expression. Then slowly recognition dawned. You came, she said. Her voice was thin, reedy. I thought you'd forgotten about me. I could never forget about you, Gran. I've just been busy. I have a big show coming up. You always have a big show coming up. She smiled weakly. That's what you used to say when you were a boy. You draw pictures on the walls and tell me they were for your big show. I laughed. I remember. You never stopped me. I never stopped you, because I knew you were going places. I always knew. She reached for my hand. Her grip was weak, but it was there. Your mother told me about the book. The art book. And the cover piece. I'm so proud of you. Thank you, Gran. Now, tell me something. Are you happy? I thought about it. The deadlines. The pressure. The constant fear are that I wasn't good enough. But then I thought about the look on Patricia's face when she saw Lily's portrait. I thought about my mother's smile when she saw my grandparents' wedding painting. I thought about the feeling of a brush in my hand, the way the colors blended on the canvas. Yeah, I said. I think I am. Good. She squeezed my hand. That's all I ever wanted. For you to be happy. I stayed with her for another hour. We talked about old times, about my grandfather, about the house I'd grown up in. She remembered things I'd forgotten. Small things, like the way the kitchen smelled on Sunday mornings, the sound of my father's laugh when he watched old movies when I left. She was smiling. It was a small, fragile smile, but it was real that I drove back home with a strange sense of calm. The weight on my shoulders was still there, but it felt lighter, more manageable. Over the next few days, I threw myself into the showpieces. I worked on the cover piece for the ART book, refining the woman's face, deepening the colors of the flowers. I worked on my grandparents' wedding portrait, adding details I'd missed. I wrote a new piece, a portrait of a firefighter I'd met at a commission pickup. His face was weathered, lined with the aras of smoke and exhaustion. But his eyes were kind. I wanted to capture that kindness. By the end of the week, I had 4 completed pieces and 8 more in progress. I was ahead of schedule. Rely. But it was enough. Then Emily called. "Hey," she said, her voice bright and frantic. "I need to talk to you about the wedding." "I'm still coming," I said. "I already told you. I know you're coming. But the live painting thing. I've been thinking about it and I want to change the plan." I put down my brush. "What's the new plan?" "I want you to paint something for me. Something specific. Not the first dance. I want you to paint my parents." I blinked. "Your parents, yeah. My mom and dad. Together. Like a portrait. They've never had one done. And I think it would be a nice surprise for them. At the reception, you'd set up the easel and you'd paint them from a photo. Or from life if you can get them to sit still." I thought about it. It was a nice idea. A thoughtful gift. But it was also another piece to add to my already overflowing plate. "Emily," I said ruefully. "I want to do this. I really do. But I've got so much on my plate right now. The gallery show, the ART book, all my commissions. I don't know if I can add another piece to my workload." "Please," she said. "I'll pay you. Triple what I said before. I just want something special. Something that's not just about me." He the vulnerability in her voice. She was read, I realized. Read that her wedding wouldn't be perfect. Read that her family didn't enough. "Okay," I said. "I'll do it. But I need you to send me photos of your parents. Good ones. And I need you to let me work. No interruptions." Done. She was practically shouting. "Thank you. Thank you so much." I hung up and read at my workbench. I had 12 pieces for the show, the cover piece, my grandparents' portrait, and now a portrait of Emily's parents. Plus 150 commissions waiting in the wings that I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I knew I had to try. That night, I was working in my shed when my father walked in. He was holding a newspaper, folded open to the ARTS section. "Have you seen this?" he asked. I took the newspaper and read the article. It was a preview of the joint show, a short blurb about James Crawford and the up-and-coming artist who would be sharing the space with him. There was a photo of me, taken from my online page. I looked tired. I was wearing a paint-stained shirt and hadn't shaved in 3 days. "Dad," I said. "How did they get this? I don't know. But look at what they wrote." I read the article again. It described me as a rising star in the local ART scene, known for his intimate portraits that capture the soul of his subjects. It mentioned the ART book. It mentioned the publisher. It even mentioned my grandmother. "Your mother saw this," my father said. "She cried for an hour. Happy TRS." I set the newspaper down. "I don't know how to feel about this." "How do you think you feel?" "Nervous," I said. Read. "Like I'm not going to live up to the hype." My father nodded slowly. "That's good. That means you It means you're not going to take this for granted." He walked over to my workbench and looked at the pieces I'd been working on. The cover piece. My grandparents' wedding. The firefighter. He studied them for a long time. "These are good," he said. "They're really good. You're going to be okay, son. I know you are." He left me alone in the shed, the newspaper still on the bench. I picked up my brush and wrote painting again. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from the publisher. The ART book had gone to print. They'd sent me a digital proof of the cover, with my painting featured prominently. It looked beautiful. The colors were even richer than I'd imagined. Congratulations, the email read. The book will be released in 6 weeks. We're already seeing pre-orders. Your section is getting a lot of attention. I read the email 3 times. 6 weeks. The book would be out in 6 weeks. And I still had so much to do that I put down my phone and looked at the wall of my shed. 23 canvases in various states of completion. Some were commission pieces. Some were for the show. Some were just for me. Experiments in color and form that I picked up my calendar R and STA route planning. I had 2 weeks until Emily's wedding. 4 weeks until the gallery show. 6 weeks until the book release. And I had to fit in the portrait of Emily's parents somewhere in the middle. I took a deep breath and STA route, painting. The next few days were a blur. I painted until my hands cramped. I slept in my shed, on a cot I'd set up in the corner. My mother brought me meals, and my father checked in every evening. Emma Urkus handled the commissions, sending me progress photos and client updates. I was in the middle of a portrait of Emily's parents when I got the call. It was from the nursing home. Emma Rga the director. Your grandmother has had a decline, she said. It's not unusual. A small stroke. She's stable now, but she's not herself. She's not recognizing anyone. I felt the blood drain from my face. I'll be right there. I drove faster than I should have. The roads were wet, and the wipers relay kept up with the rain. I parked in the lot and ran inside. She was in her room, lying in bed, her eyes open but unfocused. A nurse was sitting beside her, holding her hand. Gran, I said, walking to her bedside. It's me. It's your grandson. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes met mine, but there was no recognition. Just a blank, empty STA. Gran, please. It's me. She didn't respond. She just kept STA ring, as if I were a stranger. The nurse squeezed my shoulder. Sometimes it takes time. She may come back. She may not. I sat down beside her and held her hand. It was cold and limp, like a bird that had fallen from its nest. I stayed with her for hours. I talked to her, told her stories, reminded her of all the things she'd taught me. But she never responded. She just STA read at the ceiling, her breathing slow and labored. When I finally left, the sun had set. The rain had stopped. The parking lot was dark and empty. I drove home in silence. My mother was waiting in the kitchen. How is she? She asked. She didn't recognize me, I said. She looked right through me. My mother's face crumpled. She pulled me into a hug and we stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, crying. The next day, I went back to the nursing home. And the next day after that. And the next. I sat by her bed, holding her hand, waiting for her to come back. But she never did. On the 4th day, she passed away. I was there when it happened. I watched her chest rise and fall, slower and slower, until it stopped. The nurse came in and checked her pulse, and then she looked at me with kind eyes and said, "She's gone." I sat there for a long time, holding her hand, not wanting to let go. My mother arrived an hour later. She walked into the room and saw me sitting there, and she knew. She didn't say anything. She just walked over and put her hand on my shoulder. We stood there in silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. She was the best of us, my mother finally said. She held us together. All those years. She never complained. She just kept going.
She believed in me, I said.
When no one else did. Because she saw something in you that we were too blind to see. My mother squeezed my shoulder. We were so afraid for you. Afraid you'd fail. Afraid you'd be hurt. But she was never afraid. She just believed. The funeral was 3 days later. It was small, just family and a few close friends. Emily came, tears streaming down her face. She hugged me and said she was sorry. I told her it was okay that I didn't paint for a week after she died. I couldn't. The brush felt wrong in my hand. The colors were too bright. Everything felt empty. But then I remembered what she'd said to me. I always knew you were going places. And I knew I couldn't stop. She hadn't given up on me. I couldn't give up on her memory. I went back to my shed and picked up my brush. I looked at the portrait of her wedding day, the one I'd painted for my mother. And ISTA root painting again that I didn't paint for a week after the funeral. The canvases sat in my shed, half finished, gathering dust. The colors on my palette dried into cracked, useless discs. Every time I walked into that space, I felt her absence like a physical weight. She'd been the one who believed in me first. The one who told me I was going places when I was just a kid drawing on walls. Without her, the shed felt empty. My mother found me on the 7th day, sitting on the floor of the shed, STA ring at the portrait of my grandparents' wedding. I hadn't moved in hours. The light had shifted from morning to afternoon, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. "Come inside," she said softly. "I made soup. I'm not hungry. You need to eat." She walked over and sat down beside me. "She wouldn't want you to stop working. You know that." I shook my head. "I can't. Every time I pick up a brush, I think about her. And I can't breathe." My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When your father and I got married, your grandmother gave me a piece of advice. She said, the hardest thing you'll ever do is keep going when everything inside you wants to stop. But that's exactly when you have to keep going. Because the world doesn't wait for grief." She told me that the day before she walked me down the aisle. My own father had passed away a year earlier. She knew what I was feeling. She always knew. I looked at the painting. My grandparents were young, standing in front of a church, their faces full of hope. They had no idea what was coming. The hardships, the losses, the grief. But they had each other.
And that was enough.
"I need to finish this," I said, gesturing at the painting. "The show is in 3 weeks. I've only got 5 pieces done. I need at least 12. My mother nodded. "Then you'll finish it. One brushstroke at a time." She would have wanted that. She stood up and walked back to the house. I sat there for another hour, STA ring at the canvas. Then I picked up my brush and STA root mixing colors. The next week was a blur of work and grief. I painted during the day and lay awake at night, STA ring at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom. The sailboat wallpaper seemed to mock me. It was the same wallpaper she'd seen when she visited, the same wallpaper she'd complimented when I was 12. "I love these little sailboats," she'd said. "They remind me of the beach where your grandfather proposed." I'd never been to that beach. I'd only heard stories. But now I felt a strange urge to paint it, to capture the place where my grandmother's life had turned a corner, where she'd said yes to a future she couldn't possibly have imagined. I found a photograph in an old album, tucked away in my parents' closet. It was a faded Polaroid of my grandparents on the beach, their feet in the water, their arms around each other. The sky was blue, the water was green, and they were both laughing. The ISTA root painting that night. I used the colors from my grandmother's wedding dress, the white of the sand, the blue of the sky, the green of the water. I painted their faces, young and unlined, full of the kind of certainty that only comes when you don't know what's waiting for you. By the end of the 3rd day, the painting was complete. I stood back and looked at it. It was one of the best pieces I'd ever done. The light was perfect. The emotions were raw and real. I could almost hear my grandmother laughing. My mother came out to the shed that evening. She saw the painting and STA root to cry. "That's them," she whispered. "That's exactly them. I haven't seen that photo in years." "It was in the closet," I said. "I found it." She walked over and touched the canvas, her fingers hovering just above the paint. "She would have loved this," she said. "She would have hung it in her living room, right above the sofa." I smiled. That's where I wanted it to go. The painting became the centerpiece of my show. I named it The Proposal, and I knew it would be the first thing people saw when they walked into the gallery. The next week, I got a visit from James Crawford. He showed up at my shed without warning, a tall man in a tweed jacket, his gray hair swept back from his face. He looked like an artist. He looked like everything I wanted to be. "You're the kid who's been making waves," he said, extending his hand. "I've been following your work. You've got something special." I shook his hand, my palm clammy with nervous sweat. "Thank you, sir. I'm honored to be sharing the show with you." "Don't be honored. Be ready." The show is in 2 weeks, and I want to see what you've got. He walked around my shed, looking at each canvas. He stopped at the proposal and stood there for a long time. This is your grandmother, he said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, it's my grandparents. On the beach where he proposed. He nodded slowly. You've captured something here. Something intangible. I can feel the love in this painting. I can feel the hope. That's not something you can teach. That's something you're born with. I felt a lump form in my throat. Thank you. He turned to me. You know, most young artists trying to be clever. They're trying to impress people. They're trying to show off. But you're not doing that. You're just telling the truth. That's why your work connects with people. Keep doing that and you'll go far. He left without another word. I stood in my shed, my heart pounding. James Crawford had just complimented my work. The James Crawford. The one who'd painted senators and celebrities and people who mattered. He thought I had something special. I picked up my brush and kept painting. Emily's wedding was in 5 days. I'd finished the portrait of her parents, a affectionate piece that showed them laughing at something off camera. It was the kind of painting that made people smile. I'd also prepared for the live painting, packing my supplies and choosing a canvas that would fit the space. But I was exhausted. I'd been running on adrenaline and coffee for weeks, and I could feel myself crashing. My hands were shaking. My eyes burned. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours a night since my grandmother passed. My mother noticed. She cornered me in the kitchen one evening, her hands on her hips. You're going to burn out, she said. You need to rest. I can't rest, Mom. There's too much to do. There's always too much to do. But if you push yourself too hard, you're going to break. And then there won't be any art at all. She was right. I knew she was right. But I couldn't stop. I was too close to the finish line. The day before Emily's wedding, I collapsed. I was in my shed, finishing a final piece for the show, when my vision went fuzzy. The room tilted. I grabbed the workbench to steady myself, but my legs buckled. I hit the floor hard, my elbow cracking against the concrete. My father found me 10 minutes later. He'd come out to check on me and found me lying on the floor, dazed and groggy. What happened, he asked, kneeling beside me. I don't know. I just fell. He helped me to my feet and walked me to the house. My mother took one look at me and root fussing, making me sit down and drink water. You're not going to the wedding tomorrow, she said. I have to. I promised. You promised to paint a live portrait. You can't do that if you can't stand up. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that I could push through. But I knew she was right. I was running on empty, and my body had finally given out. I'll sleep, I said. I'll sleep tonight, and I'll feel better tomorrow. I didn't feel better tomorrow. I woke up with a splitting headache and a body that felt like it was made of lead. My mother brought me breakfast and told me to stay in bed, but I couldn't. I had a wedding to attend. I had a live painting to do. And I'd made a promise. I dragged myself out of bed and got dressed. I packed my supplies and drove to the wedding venue, a country club on the outskirts of town. Emily was already there, surrounded by bridesmaids and flower arrangements. She saw me and rushed over. Are you okay? She asked. You look terrible.
Fine, Elid.
Just tired. She looked at me skeptically, but didn't push. Okay, just let me know if you need anything. The ceremony was beautiful. Emily walked down the aisle in a white dress that seemed to float around her. Her fiancé, a tall man with kind eyes, watched her with a look of pure adoration. I stood in the back, holding my camera, taking photos for reference. I stayed on my feet through the ceremony. I made it through the reception. I set up my easel and root painting. But halfway through the first dance, my vision root to blur. The colors bled together. The music faded to a distant hum. I felt someone grab my arm. It was my father. You're done, he said. You're going home. I'm not finished. Yes, you are. He was already packing my supplies. We're leaving. I didn't have the strength to argue. I let him walk me to the car and drive me home. I didn't even remember falling asleep. I just woke up in my bed, the sunlight streaming through the window, and my mother sitting in the chair beside me. How long was I out? I asked. 12 hours, she said. You needed it. I missed the rest of the wedding. The wedding is over. Emily understands. She sent you a message. My mother handed me my phone. Emily's message was simple. You did great. The painting is beautiful. Rest up. Love you. I looked at the photo she'd attached. It was a picture of me painting the first dance, my face pale and drawn, but my hands steady and my brush moving across the canvas. I felt TRS in my eyes. I hadn't failed her. I'd done what I promised. I closed my eyes and slept again, that the show was in 1 week. I had 11 pieces completed. I needed one more. I was still tired, still recovering, but I was rooting to feel like myself again. That I looked at my grandmother's portrait of her wedding. I thought about the beach where my grandfather had proposed. I thought about the love that had ride them through all the hardrs. I picked up my brush and root painting again. This piece would be different. It would be for her. For everything she'd given me. I didn't know what it would look like yet, but I knew it would be the best work I'd ever done. The last piece came to me in a dream. I was standing on that beach, the one from the Polaroid, and my grandmother was there. She was young again, wearing her wedding dress, her hair blowing in the wind. She didn't say anything. She just pointed at the water, where the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and deep, bruised purple. Till I woke up at 4 a.m. and walked to my shed. I didn't turn on the lamp. I just stood in the dark, letting the image settle in my mind. I root painting at dawn. I didn't stop for food. I didn't stop for water. I just painted.
The beach.
The water.
The sky.
My grandmother's silhouette, small and distant, walking tower the horizon. It wasn't a portrait. It was something else. Something closer to a prayer. That my mother brought me lunch and dinner. She set them on the bench and left without saying a word. My father checked on me twice. I heard him tell my mother, he's working on something. Something important. By midnight it was finished. I stepped back and looked at it. The colors were soft and warm, like a memory that was fading but not gone. My grandmother was walking into the light, her dress trailing behind her, her hand reaching forward as if she were about to touch something invisible. I named it The Return. The day of the show arrived faster than I was ready for. I'd spent the night before framing the pieces, packing them into my father's truck, checking and rechecking the inventory list. My mother had made me a sandwich I'd be a touched. My father had helped me load the canvases, his hand steady and a refill. Now I was standing in David Chen's gallery, surrounded by my work, watching strangers walk through the door. The room was bright and clean, with white walls and polished floors. James Crawford's pieces hung on the left side, bold and commanding. Mine hung on the right, quieter, more intimate. The opening was packed. I'd invited my family, Americus, Patricia, Emily, and her new husband. They were all there, scattered among the crowd, their faces a mixture of nervousness and pride. My mother was wearing her good coat, the one she saved for special occasions. My father had on the suit he'd worn to my grandmother's funeral. The crowd moved slowly through the gallery, stopping at each piece, reading the little placa RDS I'd written. I watched them from the corner, trying to our calm, trying to keep my hands from shaking. James Crawford walked over to me. He was holding a glass of wine, looking relaxed and confident. Nervous, he asked, terrified. Good. That means you see. He gestured at my side of the room. Your work is solid. Really solid. But I want to show you something. He led me to the FAR end of the gallery, where The Return was hanging. A small crowd had gathered around it. They were standing in silence. Ring at the painting, your grandmother, James said. This is the last one you painted, right? Yeah. It's your best work. He said it without hesitation, as if it were an obvious fact. The emotion in this piece is palpable. You can feel her presence. You can feel her loss. But you can also feel her peace. That's not something you can fake. That's something you only get when you've truly loved someone. I looked at the painting. In the soft light of the gallery, it seemed to glow. My grandmother was walking tower the horizon, her hand outstretched, her dress billowing behind her. She looked small against the vastness of the sky and sea. But she also looked certain. She knew where she was going. My mother Ape read beside me. She was crying, but she was smiling, too. She would have loved this, she said. She would have stood right here and told everyone how talented you are. She was always my biggest supporter. She still is. My mother squeezed my arm. She always will be. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People came up to me, shook my hand, told me how much my work meant to them. A woman in a blue dress told me that the return had made her cry because it reminded her of her own mother. A man in a gray suit said he wanted to commission a portrait of his father. I signed contracts. I shook hands. I smiled until my face hurt, but the moment that stayed with me happened the end of the evening. I was standing alone the proposal, looking at my grandparents' young faces, when a stranger walked up to me. She was older, maybe 70, with silver hair and kind eyes. "Excuse me," she said. "You the artist, I am." She pointed at the proposal. "I knew your grandmother. We were friends back in the day. She used to talk about you all the time. She said you were going to be something special." I felt my throat tighten. "You knew her years ago, before she got sick. We used to play cards together. She'd show me photos of you, your paintings. She was so proud of you. She never told me about you." The woman smiled. She didn't need to. She was just happy to have someone to talk to. And she talked about you a lot. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. "She asked me to give this to you before she passed. She said, 'Give this to my grandson when he's ready.'" I took the envelope. It was old, the paper yellowed at the edges. I opened it ruefully, my hands trembling. Inside was a photograph. It was me, sitting on my grandmother's lap when I was maybe 4 years old. I was holding a crayon, my face red with color, my grandmother laughing behind me. On the back, in her shaky handwriting, she'd written, "He was always an artist, even when he didn't know it." I read at the photograph for a long time. My mother had come up behind me, and she was looking over my shoulder. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her friend. She gave it to me. My mother put her hand on my shoulder. "She never stopped believing in you. Not once." I tucked the photograph into my pocket and looked at my grandmother's painting. The young woman in the white dress, full of hope and certainty.
She'd been right.
She'd always been right. The last guests left at 9 o'clock. David Chin came over to me with a huge smile on his face. "Every single piece sold," he said. "Every single one, including the return." I blinked. The return sold, to a collector from New York.
Paid top dollar.
He said it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. I felt a strange mix of emotions.
Pride.
Relief. Sadness. The painting was gone, but it had found a home. David handed me a check. I looked at the number. It was more than I'd ever made in a yard. "This is yours," he said. "You rented it." I walked out of the gallery with my parents. The air was cold, the stars bright overhead. We stood in the parking lot for a moment, not saying anything. My father broke the silence. "What are you going to do with all that money?" I thought about it. The nursing home bill was paid. The mortgage was current. My grandmother was gone. "I'm going to buy a studio," I said.
"A real one."
"With windows. And heat." My mother smiled. "That sounds perfect. And I'm going to keep painting." I looked up at the stars. "I'm going to keep going. For her." We walked to the car. I looked back at the gallery, at the lights glowing through the windows. My paintings were gone, scattered to new homes. But I'd left something behind. Something that would stay. When I got home, I went to my shed. It was empty now, the canvases all gone. But the space felt different, lighter, like it had been waiting for a new beginning. I took the photograph out of my pocket and looked at it again. Me on my grandmother's lap, covered in crayon. She'd believed in me before I even knew what belief was. I propped the photograph against the wall and picked up my brush. I didn't know what I'd paint next, but I knew it would be good. I knew it would matter. And somewhere, maybe on a beach at sunset, my grandmother was watching. And she was smiling.